Okay, so those who are here, come and sit down. We will listen to back from the different groups what they discussed, what kind of ideas, headlines they came up with. So have a seat, and then we'll start with, do we have all the solutions here up front already? So we'll share the results. So we're missing one. So which solutions do we have here? Nature as infrastructure, productive regenerative agriculture, and I think we're missing still sustainable management of forests. Oh, that's there. Perfect. Okay. So why don't you have a seat, and then I would suggest that the person from Sustainable Management of Forest starts quickly presenting key highlights. Who will this be from this group? You will. Okay, perfect. Do we have a microphone that we can use? Where? Ah, here. Just take this one here. Yes, thanks. Yes. Yeah, certainly.
So our headline, forests are back and deforestation is no more. That would be pretty cool in 2030, right? In our group, the cool thing was what is much needed in all these discussions, which is multidisciplinarity. So we have Green FinTech Forum, which actually I chair, which is an international community that it looks to bring stakeholders together to help impactful initiatives. And so marrying those with the investment community and so on and so forth. You have Eco-Transfers, which looks to bring tech and funding together. You have Be Helpful, so getting the forests buzzing again with bees. So that kind of is the starting point of getting reforestation back. The WEF, so in private sector engagement, really getting all those important stakeholders on board to be able to fund and work in the project. The Forest Conservation Fund, so getting community participation, so much more local, again, local knowledge and getting working with the private sector. Philip Morris for the funding. They decided they're going to be a nice first mover and do something nice and healthy for this world, which is really, really cool.
Very good.
There you go, round of applause for Philip Morris. And Cluster Olémanique, which brings the researchers together. So it's really nice because you've got academia, you've got science, you've got money, you've got local community, you've got tech, which is really important for scaling up, and you've got kind of international community networking. So the next steps and commitments, the first thing is to define a location. Forest-wise, that could be Africa. We also, I believe you said Côte d'Ivoire, par exemple. It could be somewhere that you could start with. So defining really the local population, location, what their needs are, which means bringing in research, which means bringing in the indigenous peoples, because their voice is obviously very important. It's their home, bringing in the local authorities. After that, we define criteria for monitoring. Again, research could be involved in that. Financing could also be involved in that. And it speaks very much to what Simon Sadek was talking about earlier, which is then increasing transparency. And then that hopefully eliminates greenwash overall. Then we implement the pilot. So that requires money. Again, so once we've defined what it is that we're going to be doing, actioning, measuring, impacting, and how we're going to fund that and what exactly it's going to fund. And then hopefully when that's all successful, then we can scale up the project with tech. There you go. So if anybody's interested and wants to be involved in this, if there's any work that you can do with any of these partners, or you want to be involved, just sign up here. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm just asking, Norina, are the online groups also ready? So is anyone presenting also from Sustainable Management of Forests, their results? Do you know? Oh, yes, there is someone. Huh? So, I don't know. Hi. We can't hear you yet.
You can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you now. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Okay, so share with us what you came up with in your group.
Stephanie wasn't in our group.
Ah, okay.
I'm the next speaker.
Okay, okay, very good. Laura, were you the one in sustainable management of forests?
Yes, I was.
Okay, okay.
So we came up with the first prioritized headline that people should be aware of how to benefit from forests without destroying them. And at the same time, saying standing forests create more value than deforestation. So those were the kind of headline that we came up with. And we discussed several next steps. Aside from capacity building and attracting talent, the first step that everyone was talking about was communication. So step one, why we should take action and on forests, and second, then how to take action. And the idea would be to have all the projects that presented on sustainable management of forests today to collaborate on a global campaign, global social media campaign as a first step that communicates under one hashtag perhaps on why we should take action on forests. And as a next step, then how to take action with concrete examples. And the video of Macron was also cited as a really good example of how to showcase that. And as a last point, also in terms of financing, the point came up that perhaps industry would have the necessary financing to globally communicate on this subject.
Great. Thanks a lot, Laura, for sharing. And I think here as well, if there are organizations either online or here in the room interested in joining or in contributing to this, I think you all have in the booklet that you received the links to the mural. So there you can write down your names, or you can do it also here, and then we can collect it and take it forward. Wonderful. So I would suggest that we go now to nature as infrastructure. Yes, so Uri, or...
We're going to be a team presenting.
That's wonderful. Okay. Great. We need teams.
So, hello, I'm Vincent. So, for our topic, we had the headline as NBS outcompete gray solutions at different scales and increase well-being. We mentioned different scales because it will depend whether we are talking about a city or a region. So the geographic size of the area, here it will vary. So depending on the size, we mentioned actually the scale. And then we talked about increasing well-being. I mean, after all, the NBS solutions should boost or should improve or increase the well-being, or should be centered on the human living in this geographic area. Now, for the second part about our partners, so Yuri, you will present this part.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So maybe just to add also on the first point, the outcompete, in our opinion, means that there's no business case for gray solutions anymore. So you can create more, in a more cost-efficient way, more ecosystem services and infrastructure-like services using nature-based solutions. We also think, maybe also to add to this point, is that you need to define what kind of infrastructure service are you looking at. Is it purification of water? Is it energy efficiency, flood mitigation? So it's important to define that point, and also what kind of infrastructure you target. And then we were thinking how to build these partnerships. So we landed at multi-stakeholder groups, sort of EU language, that should include all different sectors and partners. So on a political level, from the national to regional and local, depending on the decision making, let's say, rules, or how it works on the local level. But then also you need financiers, insurance sector, technical people, academia for the research, but also sectors such as agriculture, which is often very important in the implementation of nature-based solutions. And I think that's it for partners. Also for the next steps, we discussed that intellectual property may be an issue. You need to manage that within your consortium because sometimes, yeah, if they're organizations similar, they do similar work, they may have conflict of interest. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Maybe you want to add something.
Yeah. So, I mean, the next step is going to be building the consortium. Yeah, so we're going to go and try to communicate with, we will go and communicate with all the actors interested in this project. So like Curio said, one of the issues that we have to manage is the IP, if the issue will rise, but we have to be aware about this issue. And also we have to define something that we didn't write here, but we talked about it. We have to define the geographic area. I mean, we have to define the scope of our project, where this consortium will be working on, what's going to be the target, so the geographic area, and define also the milestones that will lead us in 10 years to reach this title where the NBS will outcome the gray solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we have, I think, Stephanie with someone from the online group sharing the results of what you discussed online. Yes. We can see you well. I hope you can see us as well.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, there's a bit of a delay. Okay, I'm Stephanie Race. I'm the founder and CEO of Crop Performance and the founder and CEO of Earth Labs Group, which is an informatics platform and a fund for nature-based solutions. And I'm here representing our team on exploring regenerative agriculture. And our headline for the Financial Times was agreed to be "Regional Bioeconomies Take Off as Indigenous People Take Back Their Agency." And we came up with 9 different titles, and we had a hard time agreeing on how to consolidate our thoughts. And my comment to the group was, is the Financial Times the right publication to be to actually, I know if there's someone from the Financial Times, I apologize. I've spoken at many of their events on the future of food. I've been in the food and consumer products industry for 32 years and have done 4 companies in Silicon Valley before now. So we kind of know what's required here, but it's not a technology problem. This is all about people. And so I think, although initially our group was focused on performance indicators for showing how, we've sequestered this much carbon and this is how many, key species we've prevented from going extinct in terms of biodiversity and nature. Instead of focusing on the performance of nature, focus on the people and what needs to change and transform in the food system is really about agency and giving the land stewards, i.e. the producers of food and fiber, the control over the practices, the outcomes, and access to markets and finance and technical support that they need to actually make the transition happen. So part of this is about shifting the dynamics between how the economy currently works, which is largely dictated to by banks, insurance companies, and buyers of soft commodities, particularly in the tropics, where you have a lot of smallholder farmers. If we look at the balance of where food production is actually happening, I think it's 70% of the world's food and fiber is coming from smallholder farmers. That's not to say that the other 30% doesn't matter, but we have similar issues of agency with the divergence of owner-operator models in various countries where the majority of the land is actually owned by third parties other than the farmers themselves. And since this is a long-term play in terms of investing in soil health across the rotation of crops, if it's a annual or vegetable rotation as opposed to perennial crops, then you really do need to have alignment between those that own the land and value the land in its productive capacity as an asset with the stewards that are incented to invest in the long term. So the economics need to pencil out on any implementation of regenerative agriculture, which has various definitions: agroecology, farming in harmony with nature. It's essentially using biology as opposed to chemistry to achieve both productivity and environmental outcomes. In terms of the I'm just following along. I don't have a fancy flip chart. I'm just reading from my notes. I'm sorry. And all you can see is my big head with some grass in the background. So I apologize for our lack of fancy slides. We had a discussion about who the partners should be for such a project to actually demonstrate how regional bioeconomies could take off in terms of demonstrating agency of land stewards in the landscape. And typically the financing for such landscape scale regenerative agriculture projects, some of which are tied to regenerative forestry in the catchment. So it's like a mixed land use thing, but they're the development agencies. So it's GIZ, it's UK DFID, it's USAID, and other similar organizations, and even development finance institutes like the DCFD. I think it's a Dutch development fund that's tied to FMO. In the UK, it's CDC. That's another example of a fund, as well as some of the other presenters from earlier today, including the fund that's backed by Mirova and the Lombard ODA folks, as well as the bank. That gave a lovely presentation about how all of this can work. I'm sorry, I'm going back to my notes. Just give me a second.
But I guess we will probably see some of the things also on the mural that you discussed, right? So if you can come to a close, that would be great.
Yeah, I will. And in terms of the funding, we think it's coming from and NGOs such as the World Wildlife Federation, WWF, the Nature Conservancy, WCS. It could come from the National Wildlife Federation, World Land Trust, and CUMA was another organization. Those are groups that represent shared services on behalf of farmers, essentially providing them with machinery and seed-based systems that can be shared across a pool of producers. And we'd also involve corporates that source from some of these supply chains in Panama. We actually have an active project that's focused on coffee agroforestry and tying a couple of large buyers. They're Italian coffee companies. These are groups like Illy Coffee or Lavazza or Nestle into sourcing from Panama with a regional brand to give them global access to markets. And in the middle part of the watershed, it's mixed farming with vegetables, rice, and livestock. So we could tie corporate partners to that as well through relationships we have with OLAM, and then mangrove restoration at the coast in a particular watershed where we're working in Panama. So this question about the exercise, are we to showcase projects that we already have underway as solution providers and project developers, or if this is to be hypothetical projects that we could develop over the next 10 years, it would be interesting to have that discussion offline. And in terms of...
Stephanie, we have to really come to a close now because we don't have a lot of time and the others, we only have, so can you just one last sentence and then...
Yeah. So I think that, earlier in this workshop, there was a discussion about the intersection between climate and nature and how to future-proof a landscape. So we could use the Global Environment Facility in Swiss Re, the model that they've implemented in Cancun, Mexico for coral reef restoration as a coastal erosion protection measure. With parametric insurance, we could do the same thing with mangroves in Panama to protect the coastline. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, then we'll look into productive and regenerative agriculture.
Okay, so our headlines, we come to the new age of ecologic agriculture with zero synthetic fertilizer reach. So to tackle this issue, our partners would be PPPs, so public and private partners, international organization, corporates, especially in agro and food, Innovate for nature, policy makers as well. Then the next step would be, first of all, a market study. Then perform ADI tests, so to see if what we look at is really working. Then benchmarking as well for the same reason. And one that I really like is raise awareness about success stories, because I feel that we still don't hear enough what works and how to implement it. So I think it's really something that we have to look at. And as well lobbying, because we need to get encouraged and pushed in this direction. Maybe it was a little bit too fast.
No, that's wonderful.
And
the point.
you can still get involved just there.
Great, thanks a lot. Do we have someone from the online group shortly presenting the results? I don't know. Is there anyone from Regenerative Agriculture? Do you know Katharina? Ah, that was Stephanie. Ah, okay, good. Then, so we have no more online groups, or we have one more. We had nature as infrastructure. Then we'll go to the financing. So yes, please. The microphone is here. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dhanesh Kothare. Financing for nature, or NBS. In 2030, the Financial Times would read the headlines and sub-headlines like this. The headlines will go like, record investments in NBS. The sub-headlines will go like, the quality of these investments was AAA rating. Investors found investing is NBS solution as simple as booking an Airbnb room. And the return on investments were very clear. How are we going to achieve this? As we noticed, nature itself is very diverse, from coral reef, mangroves, trees, forest, biodiversity. The needs of financing are also going to be very diverse. There's not going to be one solution for all. There will be banks, there will be non-profit funds, there will be for-profit funds, there will be direct investments, there will be citizen funding, and so on and so forth. So all these different diverse sources of financing is what is going to be representing their own individual identities while maintaining its interoperability. And that is what different players in the ecosystem who are working towards the objective would have its own existence, as well as collaboration opportunities with common interoperable protocols, which will be managed on a blockchain as well as digital platform, plus the expertise from project experts and project deployment partners. In terms of the partnerships, we are going to need banks, foundations, non-profits, NGOs, and local communities to come together towards making sure these financing solutions are giving the return on investment in a transparent manner, which is required. In terms of the next steps, we are going to need to make a solid business plan, each one of us who are aiming towards the solutions. We need to get the early pilots and signups, pre-registrations, to get them the early interest, put some early success stories within a year or so, and start raising funding for your own financing solutions. And based on that, I think we can really achieve what we need to achieve by 2030. What I already have is my own website. So either you can come and sign up on my website, or you can just drop your name or contact here so that individuals who have been part of this solution can pick up your contact details. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Great. So in order to close the discussion today, we can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to invite, first of all, Anna Peters. She is Project Manager Sustainability at Migros. So if you want to come and join me on the stage, then I'd like to invite Till Berger. He's Deputy Section Head at the Federal Office of Spatial Development. Then Gerard, also from IUCN, to join me. And I think also the other solution providers, if you want to come as well or stand here so that we have just enough space, so it's perfect like that. And I think the idea is really a little bit to close today. We wanted originally to do this in a fishbowl setting, right? So I still want you guys to really contribute as well. We'll start discussing with the panelists. Due to COVID and everything, we weren't able to organize it in the way I originally wanted, but I think we're fine with the panel discussion. But really, I want to encourage everyone to feel free, step in, raise your questions. So I really want to start the discussion with what are the most inspiring or exciting ideas or nature-based solutions that you have heard today? And maybe Anna, we'll start with you. And you come from Migros, from the group, and so what inspired you most today?
Yes, thank you.
That sounds like.
Yeah, it's been a long day, and
it has been.
I came here early, and I was somehow motivated by the speech of Nicole Schwab. She really said something which is right now the situation I'm confronted with. She says what is needed is right now bridging, or what did she say, make the bridge or bringing together the two narratives of climate action and biodiversity, and that's how I feel within the Migros group right now. It's somehow struggling to bring these two narratives together, and I feel that we are just at the beginning of this journey. So this is really, for me, something which I captured my attention and somehow my inner feelings. And then I really liked the idea of biodiversity and the drones, the bee drones, and I, in my inner eyes, I saw bees on Migros acres flying around and bringing us interesting data on the situation, the environmental situation of our fields, at least those we have concrete access to through our industry, for example.
Great. Till, we heard a lot about regulatory frameworks and that the framework conditions need to be right. So what's your stand on that as a representative of the Swiss administration tonight?
That's a big expectation.
I know.
So you had two questions?
Yes. So you can also tell us what inspired you most today. You can start with that one, and then we can go to the next one.
So thank you for inviting me here. It was really interesting. I was joining a little bit late, but what I heard was really fascinating. I had a couple of pitch sessions at impact hubs, but I think the startups and projects presented here were really, really, really interesting and inspiring. And I read this question, was already written down in the program, which was the most inspiring or best proposal. And it's really hard to say because they're all really, really good and solve big problems. So what I liked the most from a personal point of view was the seaweed production, because it is quite sustainable way to produce food. It solves also part of the CO2 emission problem. It solves part of the biodiversity problem. It replaces soya, for instance. It is not bad for the marine environment, and it solves also, contributes to the solution of food security around the world with high protein food. So it is one I liked the most. To the question how to bring together the narrative of biodiversity and climate, maybe if I may say something to that, for me it is kind of clear, but maybe the slogan would not be that much clear. But I think climate change is the biggest threat to biodiversity. So for a long time it was land use change that was the biggest threat to biodiversity. Now it's climate change, and so if we protect our climate, we protect biodiversity. And if we do not protect climate, biodiversity will be gone very soon. So it's not only sea level rise or more storm or extreme weather events. It's biodiversity is the biggest topic. From the part of regulation, I think regulation is an important lever for all developments, because all these problems that we are trying to solve are in the field of the common goods, of public goods. And public goods can only be conserved or saved or improved if there are regulations. It is a tragedy of the commons, which makes it necessary that regulations are in place. So this is a very important part of the total system. But what I see with all the community activities that are in our reach to see, I also see that activities from civil society are a very important seed for change. Also, the startup scene is a very important area of change. When you go to impact hubs all around Switzerland, all startups, or almost 99%, are around solving problems of environmental issues or social issues to contribute to the SDGs. So it is one part to regulate, but to deliver the good solutions, to make the pressure from the bottom, the societal activities and projects are really core of the solution.
I mean, just building up on that, I think it goes back to what Nicole this morning also said, you know, this ecopreneur revolution that we need. But I think it also shows, you know, I think it's good that you're here, Anna. It also shows there are not only corporates where it is already clear. We heard from Firmenich today. They are integrating biodiversity. They have set net positive targets and so forth. But for some corporates, it's still a struggle, right? Climate is still the big thing, and the rest is in kind of somewhere else. And we heard that from Stuart or from yourself this morning, right? 1% is tackling this. We saw about 30% have targets set on biodiversity. So there's still a long way to go. What were some of the inspiring, exciting ideas that you heard? And you were saying, well, I'm going to check them against the nature-based standard. So tell us which one is the one that scores high on your list.
Yeah, well, I think we've been given a wonderful Christmas present, you know, 2 weeks ahead of Christmas, but 1 day after Santa Claus. You know, because all the ones that have been online listening, and the ones that, you know, are still loyal to us this afternoon after a long day. I mean, you've heard more than 21 presentations, 21 pitches. You've listened to some panels, and these are, you know, the probably best experts in their field that make the time to come and talk to us. So I think this is a wonderful Christmas present that was given to us. And for me, it's very difficult to select any of the projects. Why? Because they're all very different. And I think what was the beauty is the diversity of all these projects. They all have different features. They all have different viewpoints. And for all of them, I would have areas of improvement to mention. But to a certain extent, they are sparked by passion, by a willingness to solve, you know, a societal issue. And it was interesting to see a different mix of solutions out there. As you mentioned, we had 2 large corporates, you know, Lombard-Odier and Firmenich, really presenting on how they are integrating in their corporate strategy. And then you've got really startups, some companies that have been founded in 2021 that are already here on stage demonstrating. Over lunch, I was talking to one participant that was so glad to see Alver coming back after 3 years of being in one of the impact investments, and actually saying, yeah, it takes time to mature and to get something tangible, and now actually has a stand and is able to present, you know, the outputs of their work. And I think what was the other fantastic thing is that you had all these projects presented in the morning, all these ideas, these suggestions, some small scale, some large scale. When we discussed with the We Value Nature campaign, they were concerned that this was going to be a very Swiss thing. Well, all the examples were all mentioned were all outside of Switzerland, so it clearly shows this is a global issue. This is not something just for Switzerland and for Swiss companies. But then this afternoon, we hopefully showed you there are funds out there. There are mechanisms out there. And I had some of you coming to me and say, so Gerard, the Nature Plus Accelerate, is that live? And can I submit? Of course, do. And go to the Nature Plus Accelerator, but to many other funds that are out there, because that's also the other outcome for me today is we are still struggling in finding good projects. So we need, these projects to come in. I think there is a community out there that wants to nurture these projects to become viable, economically viable. I have to say that the economically viable didn't transpire on all your projects. So that's, again, the other element that we need to look. And I would also suggest to the pitches, be as concrete as possible with examples on where the change is actually happening on the ground. Because if you stay too theoretical, too at a conceptual level, then it's very difficult for the audience to really understand what is the product or what is the ask that you're wanting from us. So I was missing in some of the pitches really, hey, what's the change that your action is actually going to drive? And do you have a concrete example where you think this could be applied or where this has been applied? And some of the pitches were very good at doing that. And then the final point for me is great that actually you all seem to be quite inspired from all these presentations and these panel discussions, because we've got 6 very interesting headlines. Now we need to craft them a little bit to make sure it works for the FT, that they're not too long, and that they are speaking a language. Now let me come back on language. There's one element. I'm very fortunate because I'm across border, so have been in private sector, have worked a lot with regulators, now in the conservation community for about 10 years, and used to have a financial background. So I didn't have to translate much of what was said today. But if you are not experienced in these various fields, and we all have very specific jargon, then I can imagine that sometimes what was said was just mind-boggling and not easy understood. So that's one thing that we really need as a community to work on, is how do we translate to each other, our jargon and our way of talking about things, because that's where the misunderstanding, and that's where perhaps the project pipeline is not there, because we are talking past each other. And so how can we create that translation box, that community that understands each other, leverages on each other's expertise? Well, that's what we're really trying to do, and that's where Swiss Business for Nature will probably jump in as one collaboration platform, hopefully, at least for the Swiss environment.
Yes, thank you very much, Gerard. I think that's always important. Are there any, and I'd like to open it up before I go to the panelists again, any comments from the participants here, or maybe there are still some online, so any questions, comments that you'd like to share, or it's too late in the afternoon? If not, I'll continue just quickly with you, Anna. And I mean, it sticks to my mind that you're saying, for you, it's still a challenge to kind of combine climate and biodiversity. At the same time, you have, and you told me that's in a different area, it's Migros Industries with Ulver, you're supporting that. Would this help you? Would nature-based solutions that exist in your group or that are close to your business help you to kind of bring the topic even further within the whole group?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. Well, when I say that we are still struggling a little bit in bridging these two issues, it's not like in an intellectual way. Mm-hmm. So it's more in real life. So everyone knows it within the Migros group when we talk. And maybe I should lose some words, because when I talk about Migros group, and my department I'm working in is dealing with pushing forward sustainability within the Migros group, which means everything without the the retailer. So that's interesting because we deal with a lot of different branches. You might know Migros, which is by its core business has nothing to do with sustainability, right? So we talk about Digitech Galaxus, we talk about Ex Libris, which is rather small actor, but a very historically seen, a very long-lasting partner within the Migros universe. We talk about Migros Bank. We talk about Hotel Plan, which is right now somehow being reanimated. That's after these 20 months of Corona, since the tourism is somehow, we used the defibrillator over the last months, and now it's getting back somehow. But there's this question of what might be the new normal in the tourism industry. So there are a lot of different issues, and what we were dealing with and working on over the last 2 years was SBTi, bringing CO2 reductions down within the Migros group, which means by at least 42% until 2030. So that was on the top of our agenda. And biodiversity was sometimes in that discussion, but the focus was really on climate. And all our energies were into bringing those companies I mentioned before to ambitious climate goals. Now we have somehow reached this point, and now we are up for next. So the next step will be to bring in now the science-based targets for nature, and we are already doing this within the retail sector. So our neighboring department, which is dealing with the supermarkets and the food and the bio assortment and so on, is already working together with WWF on that. But for the group, it's still blank. Okay. So that's the differentiation we have to do, and that's why I'm talking that I'm still somehow not on an intellectual way, more on how can I practically bring in next year and in the years to come the biodiversity issue closer to the other companies within or to the whole group, linking it with the climate agenda, and making the case for let's do a business within the planetary boundaries. And that's, by the way, one of those approaches I missed a little bit today. I haven't heard the approach of planetary boundaries today. Or maybe I missed it. I'm not sure.
No, it wasn't mentioned.
But that's actually the narrative I'm trying right now within my company to say, look, Milton Friedman's story is dead. The business of business, that's over. Yeah. So the new business will be the business that takes place within the planetary boundaries. And how can we do it? Yeah. How can you, Migros, make your part to that story, or who else? Hotel Plan, exactly. For example. And that's quite a challenge. So yes, nature-based solutions, concrete ideas will help, but I think we have to do this work one step before, and overcome these, this conflict of interests.
Okay. Any suggestions, either from Gerard or from the participants or from Till to Anna? Well, you can also pass it on ahead.
No, I think I don't have suggestions. I think you know quite well what you're doing. No.
That's okay. You can pass on the microphone to Gerard. I'll have another question for you, Till.
So there was an interesting phrase that was coined this morning in some of the panels, which is the new social contract. So there's basically, there's a need for redefining success, and we hope that with nature-based solutions and the nature-based solutions, we're doing that because we need to move to a new qualitative economic model out there that actually challenges the old economic and financial systems. And for that system to change, well, I suggest that let's start by having new radical collaborations that actually are bringing then these various partners together, because then that group in itself will probably redefine what success means for that group, which hopefully when you have a financier, when you have a civil society representative, when you have the local community involved, and then the various levels of corporate entities as well. For us, for IUCN, this day was extremely interesting because it's a new journey that we are embarking on. We used to be advising and working with large corporate multinationals, because these were the ones that had the sustainability department, had the time and resources to spend some time with us, and then we left it to them to implement that within their own entities. But it's taking a lot of time. And now I see so much innovation, so much passion, so much opportunities when you're actually talking to ecopreneurs, to entrepreneurs, to small and medium enterprises and startups. So that's really the journey we want to embark now on, and actually see on how can we inspire the larger corporates to work with that that whole ecosystems of startups that have great ideas. And what's very interesting is that some of the fantastic ideas, and I'm taking the wildfire early warning system. When I saw the sensor, which is only going to measure the gas that will tell you if there's an early fire, I think with that sensor and the whole network being established, there's so many more things that could actually be measured. So by actually bringing the right people in there, we can really benefit from all that sector. And actually IUCN is working with Huawei at the moment. Now, of course, the Americans will say, oh, why are you working with them? But they are willing to invest in the green list, so actually the protected areas that have a good governance system, to make sure that they have the technology to monitor and measure all the biodiversity benefits that are being generated in these areas. But again, we are decoupling the safeguarding nature from safeguarding society, which Stuart presented to you. And I think that these smaller startups, the ones that are actually not coming with a baggage of a large corporate or a baggage of a whole regulatory measures and countries out there, but are actually used to overcome barriers. They are probably these small spinning wheels that will help us, bigger entities, larger entities, to work together. So that's really what inspired me today, listening to all these different cases.
I think maybe just what we heard before also from Solar Impulse Foundation, but there is a need for best practices sharing and so forth. And I think you also have a program at your federal office where you on a yearly basis, I think, for the SDGs. I don't recall the name. Help me.
It's just called the Promotion Program Sustainable Development.
Okay, very simple. Okay, are you focusing there as well on biodiversity? Do you have some?
Yes.
Right.
We have 3 focal points. One is sustainable consumption and production. One is biodiversity, climate, and energy, and one is help me, Chancengleichheit. It's
equal opportunities.
And equal opportunities. Thank you very much. And we have a rotation, so each topic is being treated once in a year. We have not a very high budget, but we are trying to focus on projects which are in the starting phase, which contribute to one of these 3 topics. That can be projects from the civil society, from communities, from cantons, but also from companies. And we want just to support ideas which give new solutions to these areas, to these problems that we have.
Which I think is great, because I was just thinking maybe there is a need to bring this all together, whether it is the solution at the Solar Foundation or yours or IUCN. There are so many, or what we have collected now today, right, with Innovate for Nature, and that may help inspire companies as well to say, oh yes, maybe I can do this in the tourism sector, or I can do something else. So with that, I really just want to do a final closing round, just, you know, more, yeah, what do you hope? How should Innovate for Nature continue? Or what would be, you know, what would be a next step where you say this would be really good if this continues? Or if some of the solutions that we have heard, yes, you have a question as well or a comment. Do we have, I'll give you a microphone. Yes, thank you.
It's both a question and comment.
Yes.
What I think we need is some sort of a dashboard which says where do we stand in the sense of natural capital. Let's say a scale of very bad to very good, so five rating scale, and then break it down in these different areas and sub areas, and then slice and dice. So it's a kind of dashboard which goes down, 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 and then we are able to see where exactly we are standing where over a period of time, and as and when these solutions get implemented, what is the impact? Is that rating really, is the scale really moving in the direction? Are we still there? Or are we, what exactly is happening? Because while we are able to understand and say, yeah, there's this part, then there's this part, there's this part, but I think Andre mentioned in the beginning, the natural capital, but where do we see that? So I think there may be a need of this kind of a really top-down, dashboard-driven approach, and then everything kind of plugging it into that, and then being able to visually see that. So it's a question and comment both. Who can do this?
Yeah, exactly.
and how?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. And I think we've seen a few examples of small dashboards. I think it was the one on cities, right, where they tried to do that as well. I think there are more and more, but yeah, thanks for that. But yes, so any comments or last thoughts of how this should continue and what you would hope Innovate for Nature can tackle next year in 2022?
So what I really like about this format is that it brings together the ideas with other companies, with finance, with government, with partners, and that's needed to bring forward small ideas, seeds of potential technologies or services for a change. And this is exactly what is needed. So we have a lot. So I was in a lot of events where the discussion was around, okay, this is good, this should be done, this is a nice way to go. But this insight remained in this room. And I think what is different here in this format, in this event, is that you bring together those players who need to be brought together to make it to make the rocket fly at the end. And I think this is what's needed, and I hope this is going on like this.
Great, thanks a lot. Anna, any wishes from your side?
Yes, be provocative. I guess everyone who's willing and interested to find out dashboards and methodologies and reports can do it. But be provocative and invite companies to the stage that already have like a radical transformation or innovation or radical transformation of the core business model done or in their minds, and have them here and let them present it. I think this is what I can only speak now from the side of a big corporate, and I think that's what I would find it's inspirational a lot to find these actors that already did bold moves, and I'm not talking only about Patagonia these days or these months. You can find them nearly every day in the press, which is good. I'm I don't know how many times I'm forwarding these articles to colleagues and so on. Yeah, but I think we will need more of those. And I think for those that are struggling to follow their footsteps, it's always good to have this provocation on the stage.
Great. So before we go to you, Gerard, we'll do that then in the closing. I want to thank both you, Anna and Till, for joining us here on stage and really also sharing your views. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also have a little wish, which I forgot, if I may
Yes.
come to that. I saw in several presentations the link to the SDGs. And my wish for future presentations or events would be that you make this much stronger.
Okay.
Because this shows that it is a movement, global movement, and everyone can contribute to it, be it a company, be it a civil society actor or government. I think this is the strength of this agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, that you have a common language and a common symbology, and you see everyone contributes from all parts, from all sides.
Yeah. We'll make sure we'll include this in the briefing sessions. But I think you're absolutely right, because I always say we still have a window of opportunity, I guess, of 8 years until 2030, and
Decade
that's
of action.
Exactly, and then that's why we need this. So thanks a lot. Yes, thank you.
May I make a last call to the audience?
Yes,
I mean, I told you, or I had this desire to be provocative.
Yes.
You can do it, or you can be it as well. Be critical consumers. That helps too.
Yes, that's very good. Thanks a lot again. Okay, with this we come to a close. And I'll hand over to you, Gerard, just for some closing remarks.
Yeah, so when Barbara, myself, Mark, and others, we joined up and we were trying to think about a vision for the Swiss Biz for Nature network. We dreamed and said, okay, we're going to build 100 nature-based solutions by 2030. And we had no idea if that was actually attainable, if it was a crazy target, or if it wasn't. I have to say, after today, I feel really reassured that this is clearly attainable. If every time we get this type of audience, these types of ideas, these numbers of ideas together, we certainly can, on a yearly basis, get 10 of these nature-based solutions really thriving. And it would be fantastic to also see the first ones that we are able to build, to see how over the next 10 years they then actually grow into a real sustainable business with impact, and we're then measuring the impact. So really, from my bottom of the heart, it's thank you for planting the initial seeds of all these nature-based solutions ideas. And let's make sure that we nurture these ideas now in the coming years, in the coming months, in the coming weeks. Let's not forget, all the great brain power that we've put to these various spreadsheets. And I also thank all the ones online, because I know that there has been online contributions, 40 to 60 participants online. So actually, we went out of this room as well, which is great. Technology allowed us that to happen. And one thing that we are thinking about for Innovate for Nature is then perhaps the need to also bring a little bit of unity of topic or interest, because it was all over the place, which on the one hand can be very exciting and motivating, but for some participants it needs to be probably a bit more focused, a little bit more down to action. Because what I hope is, we did spend quite a lot of time here on stage. There are quite some presentation from stage. But in the end, what our hope is and will be is that we're working on roundtables together. And that's the big part of the day, where we actually build the solutions together, the actions, and why not go out in the field as well by really, exemplifying, because that's a beautiful thing about nature-based solutions. And when you're tackling nature-related and biodiversity-related activities, what's actually happening is on the ground. You actually see it. It's not a CO2 gas that's completely transparent and that you don't know and don't feel and only, you know, have some of the negative consequences of it. When you start working on biodiversity, when you start working on nature, you can actually very quickly see some beautiful results. And I was told, and I perfectly agree with that my slides were not colorful enough and they needed to show the beauty of life and the beauty of nature. So I'll make sure that my next presentation is much more colorful than it was right now. Over to you, Barbara.
Great, thanks, Gerard. I think at this point in time, I really want to thank everyone that has contributed to this fantastic event. And I also would like to say it was also a collaboration between Intent, between waterpreneurs, Swiss Business for Nature, and the 3 organizations involved in their IUCN, Infinitude, and Engageability. But I also want to give a big applause to the technical team, because it all worked smooth, very smooth, at least what I could see. You know, there was really no problem at all. And I really want to thank everyone also. I think it was a great collaboration. And I think it shows that, you know, all these organizations collaborated to make this happen so that we can now get more people on board and really launch further nature-based solutions. So thank you all for being here. I think there is still some apéro, if I'm right, outside. Yes? Okay, perfect.
So the networking is still the key part.
The networking can still continue. And so, yes, and if you're interested in signing up to some of these solutions or really want to push forward, don't forget either to write your names on these flip charts or also send us your email, provide us feedback, also critical feedback, what we can do better next time. So thanks a lot, also from my side.
Thank you.